We talk about bad movies a lot on this show, but what I would like to tell you about very quickly is a good thing, and that is the Podcast Republic app for Android devices. If you want to hear your podcasts and have them easily organized and trackable, all you got to do is download the Podcast Republic app from the Google Play Store. You find your favorite podcasts, you favorite them, and then your episodes drop into your feed every time they're posted. The Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am Trip Lano, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers. And with me, as always, is a man who almost definitely would be seduced by a space vampire, the Macho Mandrew.
Andrew Lano. I mean, those two dude ones were definitely gay porn stars.
Absolutely. And we will talk about that in just a second. But I do want to say this is the first ever canonuary. Rolls right off the tongue, as you've been saying for
like
days
sandpaper.
now. Canon Films released their final movie in January of 1994. So this is the 25th anniversary of the death of Canon Films. And they are responsible for a slew of 80s classics, question mark,
There's
maybe?
a couple. The Dingo movie.
Yeah. So they're a very fascinating film studio. I've recommended this before on the show, but the documentary Electric Boogaloo is about the whole making of Canon Films. And while certainly they did some stuff that I have issues with, in particular, the way they would treat women who acted in the movie during their nude scenes.
That does not bode well for this film.
No, there are no reports of that kind of behavior on this movie, but there are several actresses who definitely seemed like they signed up for one thing and then were like, oh, by the way, you're going to be always naked. And so I think this actress was probably informed of how much nudity there was. But anyway, there's some problems with Canon Films, as you might imagine. But overall, the insanity with which they made films is really kind of peak 80s movie making, I think. So we're going to celebrate the death of Canon Films, which feels more appropriate than the birth to me.
Yeah, sure.
With two movies this month from the canon, as it were.
The double N, one N.
Yes. So we watched Lifeforce, so you know what that means.
We're gonna go back. We're gonna go dissect the 80s. It's your space vampires. Something's gotta be done about your space vampires.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott.
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Which was the novel title.
What's that? Space Vampires?
Yeah.
Oh.
The novel this was based on is called Space Vampires, and the studio was like, that sounds the dumbest. Let's call it something else.
I disagree. I think Space Vampires is like a movie that exactly encapsulates what this movie is.
Space Vampires sounds like something a mom would write.
Well, yeah.
Well, you reading your Space Vampires?
They sucking space blood or what?
You watching the Space Vampires?
This is directed by Tobe Hooper, who most famously directed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and got credit for directing Poltergeist, even though most reports say that he did not.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Spielberg apparently was like, not, he really wanted to direct Poltergeist, and the studio was like, you're directing too many movies. It's just, people don't want to see you direct too many movies. And he was like, all right, well, how about I just produce this one? And then you read reports and like Tobe Hooper directed like 4 shots of the whole movie. The rest of it was Spielberg just like coming in there and bulldozing him.
I mean,
so
hey, I feel like that's such a dumb, like, if you have and that's the opposite attitude today. You have a cash cow today, and we're like, we're gonna milk it till it bleeds, milk it a little more, and then push it out a window.
It's interesting. I'll run through this. Like, there was a thing back before that, 60s and like 70s, 80s, I guess, is the Stephen King time frame. I forget when Carrie came out, but
Carrie was like 70s.
Okay, so 70s, 80s. He's a prolific writer, and the book people were like, you can't put out more than one book a year, or people assume they're shitty. So I assume it's the same thinking with Spielberg, where it's like, if you put out more than one movie a year, people are assuming you're half-assing it or something like that. So they were like, you can't
I would never think that.
I know, but I think that's definitely, I mean, that's why there's all those Richard Bachman books by Stephen King, because he like wasn't allowed to write more than a book a year, and he was, you know, doing 100 pounds of cocaine a minute and just like writing a book every day. And it was just like, I gotta get these out of here. There's just books piling up. I'm coming to my ears in books. So they were like, all right. Give us a pen name. Anyway, so this is Tobe Hooper, who directed, signed a 3-picture deal with Canon, which included this movie and then Texas Chainsaw 2,
Maybe
which is a
Stay
black
Tuned.
comedy. Oh, I definitely think Stay Tuned. But yeah, Tobe Hooper signed this 3-picture deal, and then when he turned in Texas Chainsaw 2, it was a black comedy, which apparently caused a lot of kerfuffle. But anyway, this is the first one he made, and it's this interesting blend of sci-fi and horror that
And misogyny.
Yes. It doesn't quite get there, but the effects are dope. So I think we should just get into it.
It opens with this somehow terrible yet awesome music.
It is not terrible. You shut your goddamn mouth. This score is amazing.
The rest of it I enjoy, but like the opening, I was like, it sounds like terribly cheesy.
NFL Films.
What?
It sounds like NFL Films because that's what it sounds
What is
like.
Is that football?
Yes,
You're right. Let's figure out the target that you're shooting for.
Listen, every football like montage from back in the day is like this exact music, dudes running in like the snow and getting hit, and then this voice of God intro from John Facenda, like the gridiron, the place where men are made. And it's like, this is just the NFL Films theme, basically, and it's delicious that it's in this space vampire movie.
And if you didn't know it was space vampires, you wouldn't know that until they say the word vampires, and you're like, oh, I guess.
Yeah, because it's like they suck energy, which is like vampiric, but not what you think of when you think the word vampire, in my opinion.
It feels like some hoity-toity a-hole is like, well, technically, the definition of a vampire doesn't include blood. And you're like, yeah, okay,
Yes.
except the court of public opinion says it's blood.
Much like the whole Frankenstein's monster thing.
And if we ever do a movie about Frankenstein's monster, I'm not saying that for an hour. It's just going to be Frankenstein. I'm going to, at the top,
Or we'll
acknowledge, but I'm not doing it for an hour.
Yeah. So they do a really incredibly silly thing that I also love, where they just put the date but not the year.
Mm-hmm.
As like on screen, which is like, well, wait a minute. You thought you were getting around that thing where you were like, it's the future, and then it arrives too quickly. But instead, it's just like, well, wait, like a month from now.
So I think it was supposed to be a month from now, because
I think so.
That's when Halley's Comet. It was passing by, but what's so special about Halley's Comet, Mr. Spaceman, Dr. Spaceman?
It was like very publicly aware because of the cult thing. I think there was I can't remember the name of it, but there was a group of people who thought that there was like a hidden spaceship in the tail of the comet. And then they committed suicide so that their bodies would, like, their spirits would, like, ascend to this thing and go by. It's like a very, very famous cult. People are literally screaming at their radios right now, or their devices, of like, you fucking idiot! It's that! But man, I'm gonna look it up.
Well, I meant more scientifically, beyond the that kind of stuff, the pop culture stuff. Like, is there anything significant about it scientifically, or is it just a comet?
It's the most famous one because it comes back to Earth every 75 years or so. So
how do we know it's the same comet? Like, it feels like if a dolphin swims by and then another dolphin swims by, you can be like, oh, it's the same dolphin returning.
Well, okay. First of all, you can identify a dolphin. That is like a thing you could do. And also, like, we have the technology to identify space comets.
As the same comet?
Yes, they are able to, like, visually identify it. Just like a dolphin might have, like, I don't know, a white patch around its nose or something.
It's called cocaine.
You just basically said all dogs are the same to me. You realize that, right?
Dogs.
You just basically were like, all golden retrievers are the same dog. I can't tell two golden retrievers apart. Like, yes, you can.
No, I was just saying, like, it seems silly. They're like, oh, it feels like it could have been a scam.
The reason it's famous is because Edmund Halley, the guy who it's named after, examined reports of a comet from the past and then decided, based on the description of it, that it was the same comet and predicted when it would come again, and then it did come again.
Oh, and what year was his prediction? Like, when was he alive?
So he predicted it would return in 1758, and he died before that. But it did come in 1758.
Because I was going to say, he was like, Magellan time, right? 1700s?
Yes. Yeah. 1600. Yeah. 1700s, rather. Yeah, 1700s is probably more likely. But then it came in 86, and a bunch of like spacecraft got close to it, and then we had telescopes but could like look at it at that point. So the next one is 2061, I want to say.
So potentially in our lifetime.
I mean, I hope so.
I mean,
it's only 40 years from now.
Assuming it does come.
Oh, it'll come. Don't be doubting the comet. I'm just now assuming you think I'm dying before I'm 70, which is a little uncomfortable for me. Just FYI. Like, Trip ain't making it to 73. I don't know what you all are
the state of the
thinking,
world.
but...
Who knows what's going.
Well, yeah, that's true.
None of us take a month.
That's true. Yeah, you know what? It's entirely possible that we'll all just be water world by then, and then who will care about that? Because
peeing in bottles, putting it through a machine.
Yeah, just like peeing through. Oh, you know what? I got the Hale-Bopp comet and the Halley's comet confused. The Hale-Bopp comet was the one with the cult. That was the 90s.
Okay.
Heaven's Gate was the name of that cult. Heaven's
Gate is the guy with the Kool-Aid. Was that Kool-Aid?
Yes. Yeah. And the sneakers and the tracksuits.
Yeah.
Halley's Comet was just famous because it's a recurring comet.
To a cult.
Unrelated to a cult. Hale-Bopp cult, Halley no cult. Halley, I think is how you're supposed to say it. Anyway, we go on this ship, and it's like Diet Star Trek. The ship design.
And they give you a really great fake science explanation for why there's gravity on the ship. Because they didn't. Yes. They're like, we don't have the budget to make everyone float or their hair look silly. So
yeah,
it spins fast enough for there to be gravity.
Yeah, I mean, that's how most sci-fi shows get away with that. I think that's I think Star Trek manufactures artificial gravity in the same way.
I mean, I don't have a problem with like, oh, there's an artificial gravity, crater or whatever, but the idea that it spins so fast, I'm like, they would just all be vomiting.
Or they're like stuck to the walls like the Gravitron.
You have to like shimmy around.
Like, yeah, we have gravity, but at what cost?
Well, it's better than there was that terrible Lady Astronaut TV show at some point between 2000 and today.
Okay.
And they were like, we have special hairspray, and that's why our hair doesn't move in space.
What show are you talking about?
It was a show on like ABC or NBC about like lady astronauts. I swear to God, hand to God.
I think you're making this up. What they had special hairspray as that like
was their excuse.
And what was the premise of the show? Like your standard like designing women?
But in space maybe? Hang on.
Yeah. This sounds made up. It sounds like you're just saying words.
No, it's real.
Or this is going to be like a one-off thing.
No, I swear, hand to God, it's a real show. Oh, no, it was Defying Gravity.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Spray that causes hair to hang down in zero gravity. Because I Googled astronaut hairspray TV show.
I tried that too. It kept giving me Hairspray the musical.
Yeah. Well, that was a necessary diversion.
45 minutes later. We're going to edit it out, but that was genuinely more than 10 minutes. Just FYI, listeners at home. So there's this mysterious object in space. It's shutting down ships. We have to go examine it. So we do some like really good spacemen in space floating on green screen.
It's so bad because I don't even think it's people. It looks just like dolls on strings because there's no movement from them at all beyond just like them sliding across the screen.
The problem is they move like a Christmas ornament and not an action figure.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a Christmas ornament of a person, they don't put articulation in it. Like, there's no reason for it to be. So their legs and arms are stiff. And if you ever see people moving in space, even when they like are kind of floating to the next thing, like there's a little bit of movement in their arms and legs. And that's what makes this look so silly.
For sure. And it's terrible 80s CGI.
Yeah. And this kind of like the design of this whole thing is if you took Star Trek and Alien and then kind of just smushed him into a ball and kept like rolling it around.
With a little bit of Dracula.
Yeah.
You ripped a page like, out of the Dracula book and rolled it up in it. Because they get in this. They get in the ship. Or I guess, do they call it a ship that they're going to?
I can't remember what they call it specifically.
A spacecraft. And it's filled with these bat creatures that look like they would be amazing Halloween decorations.
Yes. They're like all desiccated and empty looking and just kind of floating around.
Mm-hmm. And then the one guy decides to touch one of them, and I was like, no, because you touch the one, then they're all going to wake up and eat you. Don't touch things.
Right, yeah.
National Parks rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Leave
It's
only
also...
memories.
That's not the phrase, I'm sorry to say.
That's the Thunder
Leave
Girls.
only footprints. Yes.
The Thunder Girls are...
Don't leave your memories at the place that you acquired them. That doesn't seem very good for you. Take only pictures, leave only footprints is the slogan.
Okay.
Anyway, there's this like real bad knockoff Jaws score. Like it's like da-da-dun, da-da-dun. And I'm like, wait a minute, everybody knows what you're doing right here. Like this is very, very clearly just another score.
They try and Jaws us later with they do a knockoff of that Ben boat scene.
Yes, yeah, they do absolutely try to rip that off. So they come into this chamber, and there's these like 3 glass coffins with naked people in them. And I do have to raise an objection here. Obviously, I'm a straight man, but this woman is fully nude, and these dudes have like strategic coverings over it. No.
Yeah, if
Hang that
she's
dick
pull out that dong, let the dong out. If you're gonna show all of the lady.
Yeah, and I don't want you to like be gross about anybody's body. I don't want you to be like doing stuff that's disgusting, but just like if they're naked, everybody's got to be naked. Equality of the nudity is a big thing. Like
it drives me nuts that in movies you can see tip to tail of a lady fully nude, but a dude, as soon as you get to a waistline, it's like, and then there is a plant in the way.
Yes, there straight up is a plant in the way of this guy.
And one guy's is just like frosted for no reason.
Yes.
Only
and
in his
frosted
dick.
only in a circle over his dunk. It's stupid.
And then the other one's just like covered with something else, and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah, not appropriate.
It's the first in a long string of unequal nudity that feels misogynistic and leering and gross.
Yeah, it really is just because this is a movie for 13-year-old boys that this woman is naked. Like, there's no, like, beyond this first scene, there's no reason for this character to be naked. And, like, because I could argue...
Because later, there's a naked man, and they put him in a cell and put a bathrobe on him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, because when you put her somewhere, she didn't get no bathrobe.
And she gets clothes for, like, a hot second in the movie, but it's...
With 12 minutes left. And then she takes them off 2 minutes after that.
Exactly, immediately, yeah. Yes.
What the hell?
So she is a softcore porn star, mostly. Like, most of the things... Yeah. When I was looking up who she was, one of the things in her filmography was this movie called Emmanuelle 4, and I was like, oh, crap, is this a 4 movie that I haven't seen and, like, heard of and don't have on our list?
I mean, yes, but...
So I click on it, and Emmanuelle is a series of softcore pornography films that there were 7 of. She was Emmanuelle in 1 through 4, and then the last one, there was a different Emmanuelle for 5 and 6. And then this softcore porn series was so beloved that it was resurrected 2 different times in France, once in the 90s and once in the 2000s. Like, French people apparently cannot get enough about softcore porn.
Do you think that's what Rochelle is based off of?
It could be. It would definitely be that kind of movie. But the first Emmanuelle ran like in theaters in France for over a decade.
Over a decade?
There was one theater that just kept showing this movie, and people kept coming, like enough that people were still going to see a softcore porn film in public.
God damn. I can't imagine.
No, I cannot imagine it at all. But like the fact that she's in a bunch of, we're not, just FYI, we are not going to cover Emmanuelle 4, the softcore porn film, on this podcast, even though it came out in the 80s. But I just was like,
nor Lady Chatterley's Lovers, which is also a canon film.
But I like ran down this rabbit hole of like, what the hell, Emmanuelle 4? And then it was like, she reprised the role in Emmanuelle 7. And I was like, 7? We made 2 without her? And then it's like, no, get on back here for more softcore porn.
How did I miss that?
Crazy.
On the wiki?
I don't know, but it is the buck wild. As France is an interesting place, I will say that.
It is. I feel bad for this actress because she's naked and nobody else is really naked. At all. And it's not one of those, waist up, so she's wearing a pant. She could be wearing a pant or whatever. It's a lot of shots of her full-bodied, walking down a staircase, walking up a staircase, walking down a hallway. Just fully nude.
And, it doesn't appear that, like, there is no way you could hire this actress without explaining this, right? Like,
No,
there's no way you're
not.
like, oh, yeah, there's some nudity. Like, you have to be very upfront about the fact that this movie requires you to be naked at all times. But, yeah, you're right. It doesn't do anything other than is kind of titillating, I guess.
Yeah, like, I think you could have easily given her, especially if she's a space vampire, give her a flowy, ethereal, like, nightgown or like robe or something that would kind of like, because as she walked it could like flow behind her as though like there's a magical presence to her.
Yeah, I mean, Dracula has a cool costume. This lady could have a cool space vampire costume.
Oh yeah,
I'd be fine with it.
Metallic black with metallic red liner.
I don't think it needs to be full Dracula, but yes, it could be something like that.
Yeah, like
she doesn't need to have like a space medal around her neck for no apparent reason.
I'd be into that. It's her courage.
She's got like a widow's peak.
Yeah, because she also has to kiss a lot of people, and not one of them looks like it's enjoyable for either party.
Well, all these dudes are very sweaty. Like, this is a very sweaty looking movie, and it's just like the sex scenes are so weird. We'll get into that in a second. So we keep going off the rails. So the commander of the ship gets hypnotized, and they like that'll come into play a lot later, like the vampire hypnosis thing, which I feel like is an underplayed part of the vampire mythos, generally speaking.
In True Blood, they used it a lot because it was called a glamour, and they like fully hypnotized people.
Yeah, I know it's a Dracula power, but it's like a not often talked about one. So it's interesting to see it like be such a big part of it here.
Yeah, because when they get into it, the vampires basically infect their mind, and that's kind of all they can think about, and they establish a link between the two.
Right. So we find these three corpses, or the three bodies that are preserved, and then all over the ship are these like horribly like husks of people with like looks like all the liquid's been pulled out of them. The design of these props is really, really cool.
Incredibly well done.
It's like the best part of the movie by far. And I will say, I called it Diet Star Trek earlier, but I really do like the design of the ships and stuff. It's very interesting design of the movie.
Yeah. Also, I guess if it's contained in the spaceship, but my other question was, how would a fire in space work? Because fires need oxygen. But I guess if it's self-contained and he used the oxygen on the ship to do that.
Yeah, that's usually how that goes. There's oxygen for the humans, so if there's a problem, it's really dangerous.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's like a huge plot point in Apollo 13.
Gotcha.
Is like trying to fix this problem without causing a fire because it's concentrated oxygen and it's, poison.
Which one is the scary
flammable.
Apollo? Is it 11?
Well, Apollo 13 is the one. Wait. What the scary Apollo? Are you talking about like the found footage movie from like 4 years ago?
I think so.
That's like 17 maybe. Apollo 11 is the actual moon landing. My God.
No, I know, but
I'm like genuinely horrified at you asking that question because I'm like, you do know that, right? That is a fact that is in your brain. I hope the Apollo 11 is the actual goddamn moon landing.
There's a movie called
I know
called Apollo 11.
It's not called Apollo 11. It's called like Apollo 17, I think. Apollo 11 is the actual moon landing. People would have been mad about it unless there was like Neil Armstrong fighting off goddamn aliens with a club.
Apollo 18.
Okay, so I was off by one.
Well, I knew it wasn't God damn it.
You said, well, Apollo 11 is the scary one, right? And I was just like, he has to know that that's really the moon landing, right? Like, I know we both have big, dumb, bad brains.
I thought it was like one of those, like, ooh, what if movies.
It's Neil Armstrong with a machine gun. Get away from her, you bitch!
Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah. Yes, it's Buzz Aldrin, like, in an alien claw. And
I would totally watch that.
I would too. Buzz Aldrin's the man.
I would rather it be Buzz, like, late 2000s Buzz and Neil.
Like old men. They have to send the old men back to space?
Yeah.
I think Neil died before that, I think.
Oh.
But yes, old I'd be there for that movie. Have you ever seen that video of Buzz Aldrin knocking out the guy who tries to tell him the moon landing didn't happen? It's fabulous. He just like straight up old man knocks this guy out. Like it's fully old man strength of just like he just rocks this guy, but the guy is like screaming at him about the moon landing being fake, and Buzz Aldrin just hits him like one punch to the jaw and knocks him out. It's great.
Oh, I love that. He was a great guest star on 30 Rock.
He was.
Would you like to yell at the moon with an old man?
Yes. Yeah, delicious.
I don't believe in walls. I only knock them down.
So anyway, we're back on Earth. We're trying to figure out what to do, and we go in to examine one of these people. And this guy has this awesome. It looks like the guy from Morton Joe from the new Mad Max movie with this like mouth covering and then these hoses like running behind it. It's this very weird face mask breather thing they have.
Yeah, and this was the moment that I realized that this movie wasn't gonna be what I wished it was, because I was hoping it was going to be like sort of a Teeth like vibe where like the men were gross and they got punished. Because I was like, oh, he's going to like try and like grope and assault this unconscious humanoid, like what looks like a human woman. And she's going to like snap and like kill him or whatever. But no, it wasn't that at all.
No, it just is like all sexy for no reason whatsoever.
Exactly. And then she drains him like Freddy drained Lisa in Nightmare 4?
I think that's right. It's very Ghostbusters-y, like swirling energy, special effects type stuff.
And then he's a husk. And proceeds that 8 people, like, in turn, 8 people, like, see on the monitor what's happening and run into the room. Like, no. You seal that room.
Yeah, exactly. I would hit the button that floods it with poison. Is there like, can we just flood that room with oxygen or something? Like, is there a way to do the bad thing?
You weld the door shut.
Exactly.
And then you're done.
Exactly.
That's
yeah.
it.
No,
Sorry.
No way. Yeah. I'm done. So she goes she busts out of that room and she's walking through this facility totally naked. And this is they're all pretty bad, but this scene is perhaps the most egregious where these dudes are just like, babe alert, and their like tongues are hanging out and they're doing like ooga eyes, and I'm just like, I get what you're doing. Like, again, you're making a movie for 13-year-old boys to watch late at night on VHS tapes, but like, come on already.
It's so bad. Because like, also, you're fully grown men. You've seen boobs before.
Yeah, presumably. And then the other crazy thing is the one starts acting like she's a stray dog. He's got like a biscuit in his hand and he's like, come on down.
I thought that at first, but then I realized he wasn't like using the biscuit. He was just like, come over. I think he was eating and then stopped.
It was like he was mid-sandwich.
He was mid-sandwich. He was like, come here. Just like calmly come down this. Because he wasn't like, there's a very distinctive mannerism and like way you hold food out for an animal.
Yeah,
and he wasn't doing quite that. So I was like, just finish your sandwich and then do your job.
Or just don't walk over with your potato chip in hand or whatever the hell it is. Like, just drop that, you fat slob.
Yeah.
So she does this really awesome like lightning strike thing and blasts the glass out of this room, and it looks awesome. The effects of this movie rule. I will say, like, unequivocally, the effects of this movie rule. They're very, very good.
I love all of them, even though her powers are very unclear.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of whatever they need it to be for this scene to move on.
It's very Superman.
Sort of the deal. Yeah.
Whatever they haven't written yet.
He rips that S off his chest for no reason at one point, and they're like, all right, that's fine, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
The kids will watch it.
Yeah, that's fine. So there's this like... the part where this movie gets bogged down is we spend all this time with scientist people who I like could not care less about, and they're all trying to figure out like what's going on. There's this
I like
kooky,
Turtleneck.
Is that the kooky white-haired guy or the other one?
He's the one we follow for most of the movie. He throws the sword at the end.
Okay, that dude I dig. The two astronaut dudes who are the sort of heroes of the movie I think are fine. But there's this whole subplot with this white-haired kooky scientist, like very much in the vein of a Doc Brown, that's just like he's
the
talking
one
about
who at the end is the twist.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's like talking about like how Lifeforce is conserved and there's like something about energy transfers and da-da-da. And it's like, I'm watching the movie. I saw her suck the life out of that guy. I get it. Like, it's not that complicated a thing you're trying to express.
Stating the obvious.
Yeah, like, but it's like 10 minutes of this guy doing like the science behind why this works. And I was like, who could care? Who could possibly care? That's not why anyone is in this movie. Like, it's a naked space vampire. That's what you're selling me. Don't just give me what it says on the tin. I don't need you to explain energy conservation law.
Honestly, if the movie was called Naked Space Vampires, I would like that title more than this. But if it's just space vampires, I prefer Lifeforce.
Agreed. But this movie is, if you took out the scenes, like, it is a small number of edits away from being a Cinemax late night movie called Naked Space Vampires. That's like exactly that movie. Yeah. It's really not that far off from that kind of movie.
Yeah.
The sex scenes aren't sexy enough to be that, but if you change that, it would be one of those movies, I think.
For sure. They also say they're like, we've x-rayed them and all the images are blurry, and they're like, what the hell does that mean? Because what the hell does that mean?
Yeah, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what that means.
And he's like, these shiny plexiglass cases that look like Snow White are actually just a force field. No, they're not. I can see the lights reflected off the plexiglass.
And later, when they try to like explain that, and they have the commander, the main guy, like telling the story about how it like he went to touch it and his arms went through it. It's like a very bad composition of shot where it's like it's a glass case, and then he goes to touch it, and it's like, whoop, no, it's not there anymore. And it's like, well, hold on a second.
Yeah, it's very much the glass in the python cage at the zoo in Harry Potter.
Yes, exactly.
It was there. Now it's not.
Yeah. So they're doing this autopsy on the guard husk, and the guard husk like wakes up, and I love this puppet.
Oh, and you missed the gay porn twins.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They get shot like 100 times each, right?
And then blown up.
Yes.
Because naked men have to be met with severe aggression.
Yeah. Nobody's waving.
Two naked men are met with severe aggression and violence, but a naked woman is treated like an animal.
They try to get her to come over with a sandwich hunk.
Which, like, depending on the sandwich, that would work for me.
Yeah, I might be there. But yeah, there's nobody trying to wave a potato chip at these hunks. They're just killing them.
Which, like, depending on what kind of sandwich it is, that might work for me.
Come
you
on,
got
boy.
A good Reuben?
Come on. Yeah,
you got a
exactly.
good Reuben? I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah. You know, a good Italian hoagie with nicely, freshly sliced deli meats.
Slobby Joe.
Yeah,
for those people in this area.
You're narrow casting for people in sight of a Capriati's restaurant, but yeah, I can get there for that.
So yeah, and now we get the amazing puppet work.
Yeah, so after they kill the two naked dudes to eradicate that pestilence, they start doing this autopsy on this desiccated corpse, and it's so awesome when it like opens its eyes and sits up. It's like 3/4 of the reason we're doing this movie, because in the trailer I was like, oh god, that's such a cool puppet.
It was amazing. It reminded me of the scene in Seven with Sloth, I think.
Oh yeah, the Sloth is the one that's tied to the bed, right?
Yeah, and he's filled with air fresheners, and like, oh, he's dead, and then all of a sudden he's just like
I don't think that's a puppet in Seven.
Yeah, that's a person.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
this
later
is definitely a puppet.
This one is a puppet, but later there is a person in a suit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
In the cell. And so the puppet, so the husk of a man makes out with, although it doesn't really make out, he just kind of breathes his life in, because men aren't allowed to kiss men except for the glimpse of Patrick Stewart kissing the lead.
Yes. I don't think they need to actually touch, because she doesn't like maintain contact the whole time. But you're right. It definitely is like hey, we don't need two dudes kissing here. What are you doing? Yeah.
Because he brings his mouth in, and then the husk of a man becomes full again.
Yes.
And I wrote, what?
Yeah.
Because this is not how zombie lore works. This is not how traditional vampire lore works. I was confused.
So it's kind of like when they do it, they can either turn them or not turn them. And I think this guy got turned, so he has the vampire force in him.
I took it as if someone gets fully drained, they aren't dead because they can pull from someone else.
Yeah, that seems like...
Because later they describe that the female vampire is just like kind of only like topping up as necessary. She's not draining anybody.
Right.
So it seems like when someone is husked, they will wake back up and try and husk somebody else so that they can keep going. But like, if you need to fix every 2 hours, get a new drug.
Yeah, or just, start taking bigger doses of it.
Yeah, because they find that there's a woman husked in the park.
It's these two, like, the only word you could use here is a bloke. Like, it's they're so British and so English, and it's just like, oh yeah, we found this lady in the park there, governor. And I'm like, why are the chimney sweeps from Mary Poppins in this movie for 10 seconds?
Dick Van Dyke here?
Yeah, like, what the hell? Why are these two men in this movie? And like, they're so out of place in the way that they talk and the way that they look. Because like, it's a movie where you're hanging out with the scientists the whole time, and then they just like, it seriously felt like somebody's cousins that they just like wanted to work into the movie.
Yeah, and then on top of that, they're like, well, one of them was naked, and they were two ladies, so we assumed they were, And I was like...
shagging, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey?
Well,
wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey?
First I went, prostitutes? And I was like, that's a weird... And I was like, oh, lesbians. Because that 2 seconds later, it's like, we thought they were going to be shagging in the woods. And I was like, God, I hate you.
Is she a goer? Hey? Is she a goer? Hey? And this is like, why are we suddenly doing Monty Python in the middle of this thing?
It's very weird. And so it's a naked woman husked, and they're like, oh, well, better get her. They're like, well, I guess our naked woman has clothes now. And the upset seems to be that they can't look at her boobs anymore. Not that she is, able to walk freely.
Yeah. Or, harder to track down and find. It's like, no, we just can't see her naked no more.
Yeah. So they get this naked woman back to the place. Don't cover her up. Then they check in with the naked man they covered up with a bathrobe because he's a man. And he turns into a husk again because he hasn't fed.
But then he disintegrates like into sand, and it's real cool looking.
Because the one doctor's like, he didn't feed in 2 hours, so he turned into... And they're like, what? And he like crouches down and picks up a thing and stabs him with it.
He pokes him with a stick, basically.
Yeah. And I was like, why do you know that? Why was your hypothesis that he would turn to dust?
They cue up Kansas and they all just start singing.
Yeah, like what empirical evidence led you to this? What part of the scientific
maybe this was all covered
jump to dust.
Maybe this was covered in that 15-minute thing I zoned out of where he was explaining like energy conservation and the law of matter in theory.
Maybe, yeah. So then they go like 2 doors down to the other jail cell where the doctor that he husked is awake and kicking now. And sometimes it's a puppet, and sometimes it's a dude in the costume with a prosthetic work on because he still has all his clothes on,
right?
And he charges the cell door so hard that he dusts himself like he's a vampire on Buffy.
And they all get like covered in it. It's real gross.
What? And my first thought is like, maybe this is in our lungs now. Maybe we are now infected.
Yeah, I would be terrified.
And then they're like, well, I have a theory that the young woman should be affected in 30 minutes. And they go up there, fully a naked lady husk on the table. And I was like, come on, man, cover her with a sheet.
Yeah, I mean, really. Have a little bit of respect for the dead here.
Come on. And she freaks out. And I thought she was going to start pulling electricity because she had, like, the thingies on her head.
Right.
The like, I don't know what the sensor.
Like, EKG sensors are basically.
Yeah, and all the machines start freaking out. And I was like, oh, she's going to suck up all the electricity in this place.
That's what I thought, too.
And be a second naked lady walking around. But no,
sadly, it's not that cool. Yeah. This scene reminds me very much, her on the table, it reminds me of have you ever seen Return of the Living Dead?
That's the funny one, right?
Where they talk.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a minute since I've seen it, but yes.
The big famous scene in it that you would remember is the punk rock girl dancing naked in the graveyard.
I think I remember that, yes.
So there's a scene in that where they get this zombie strapped down to an autopsy table and it wakes up and it's like, brains. It looks very much like this puppet here.
Okay. Oh, I think we saw one of those zombies at the Zombie Museum in Monroeville.
Yeah, I think we did.
So then all of a sudden they're like, hey, an escape pod from the Winston Churchill is landed in Texas, and they're going to go bring him here. And I would say roughly the entire National Guard of that's in Texas shows up to this one escape pod.
With, like, guns drawn and ready to shoot whatever's in it. It's, like, just an astronaut.
Mm-hmm. With a beard. And they shaved him for some reason. I was like, he looked good with that beard.
He did.
So, do rockets have escape pods like this? Like, is that a thing?
Well, they call it an escape pod, but it looks like a capsule from, like, any actual space.
That's
like, back in the day when...
It looked like a real thing, like a thing that I have seen in real life.
Yeah, it's like the sort of escape. I mean, it's not really an escape capsule, but like the space capsule would be, ejected.
All the rest of the ship pulls apart, right? And then that's what remains and parachutes down.
So they call it an escape pod, but to me, it looked a lot more like the just like capsule of the ship.
Yeah. And then he immediately goes to London, so there was no reason for him to have been in Texas at all.
No.
And
I think it's only because Tobe Hooper's from Texas.
Oh, maybe.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. And he's like, hey, I set the fire to save everyone because I knew there was bad shit going on. Sorry. And they're like, oh, you're psychically linked to the lady vampire. Go to bed.
Yeah.
And he has...
We're gonna monitor you. Go to sleep now.
He has a terrible, like a traveling carnival haunted house dream.
He really does.
Where a bat prop flies out at him, and then all of a sudden the bat is the sexy lady on top of him. And I will ashamedly admit that this is where I was like, oh, right, bats and vampires.
It took you a while to put that together,
because I forgot about the bats, because they're kind of inconsequential. It's not like they ever are important beyond, we saw bats.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And then they mentioned the vampires like 20 minutes after that, and then like 10 minutes later they show this, and I was like, oh, right, that's the thing. And they kiss very uncomfortably.
Yeah, they don't look like either of them are enjoying it.
No one looks like they enjoy kissing in this movie.
No. It's very much like all right, do it again. Get in there. I don't know why I've made Tobe Hooper such a monster, but I'm more picturing it as the producers.
I didn't even realize you were being Tobe Hooper. I thought you were just...
Well, I wasn't intentionally, but it's like, who else would... I was just thinking that, producer guy. Okay, that's what my intention was, but just to make sure someone didn't think...
brother, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. One of Golan and Nor Globus, the heads of canon.
Yeah. And so they're like...
He also does this long explanation of like what... Like we talked about eventually, but his explanation of like what happened on the ship takes a while to get to the point.
And then later we find out that there's more to the story. And I was like, things I didn't need to know.
Yeah. If the parts that you showed me in painstaking detail weren't that important, why did you show them to me?
I get it. And so they're like, hey, if she can see into your mind, I bet you can see into her mind. And I was like, I don't think this isn't a telephone. I'm pretty sure this is a microscope situation more than a...
They treat it like Harry Potter and Snape, or not Snape, Jesus, Voldemort. Yeah, where it's like they have this weird telepathic connection, and they're like, exploit it, Harry, get in there.
And so he's able to see her, but not through her point of view. He's just able to like be next to her.
Yeah.
And she looks completely different. And I was like, wait a minute, she can shapeshift now?
Yeah. They like try to explain it that she jumped into the body with the energy transfer, but it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Because then it should have been the husk of the dark-haired lady at the park that they found.
Right, exactly.
It should have been a jump. Because then later they're like, oh, she's jumping bodies. And I was like, so is she shape-shifting or is she jumping bodies? Because you're not being clear.
Those are different things.
So then he's like, oh, she's a sexy redhead lady in Ireland, it looks like. Like, she looks like the Highlander.
She does look... It looks like we take a detour to the movie Highlander for a little while, period.
Also a canon film.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, she's getting in the car with this old man and lifting up her skirt, and he's touching her. And I was like, we can stop this. I get where we're going.
Anytime you want to pull the brakes, pump the brakes and pull over, I'm fine.
Pull the cord, get him out of there.
Fine. Yeah, it's like... It's also such a silly thing, like... I've never had this happen to me because I don't think it actually happens. But
what? What are you about to say?
You don't get it. Like, The way that women and men interact in movies when like the woman is seducing the man, where she gets in this car, clearly she says something sexy to him because he's like, all right, and they get in the car. She starts hiking her skirt up, and this dude goes from like, oh, we're complete strangers to into it instantaneously. Like there's not a second thought in his brain of like, well, this is a little weird, huh? Right? Like if this happened to me, like I wouldn't pick up a hitchhiker, but in a world where I've picked up a hitchhiker and the woman immediately is like, hey, can I show you something? And starts lifting her skirt. I'm like, whoa. What is this interaction to you? I don't understand what's happening.
Gay culture is very different, and that's all I'll say about it.
Yeah, I just, the way that they show these two people interact is just pants on head crazy to me, where it's just like, oh, okay. Like, it doesn't even appear that they've had a conversation about like, hey, you want to do some sex stuff? It's just like, hey, this is what my lady parts look like.
Can that be the out of context quote? Hey, do you want to do some sex stuff?
Is that how they do it in the gay culture? That's how I was taught to ask for
you
consent.
sit backwards
every
on
time.
a chair.
Yeah.
You want to do some sex stuff?
Yeah. Oh, it's like a substitute or
yeah, I'm like
a cool
like
sub.
Your like sex ed teacher is their sub. Yeah. No, in the gay community, we just send a dick pic, and we're like, okay, cool. When?
Okay, but I'm taking the internet out of it. It's like it would be as if someone walked up to you on the street and was like, "Hey," and you were like, "Hey," and then they just took their dick out. That would be the entirety of the interaction. That would be weird if it happened on the street in public.
On the street, yeah.
Not in a place where people are like going to a place for the
internet,
purposes of sex.
With the advent of the internet, that's basically how 99% of interactions go.
I know, but I'm talking about it very specifically happens in movies where it's like a woman gets in a car and starts hiking her skirt up is not that uncommon a thing in a movie. And if that happened to me, I would be confused. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, all right, let's do this. I'd be like, wait, what's happening? Why? I'm driving. Why didn't you do this?
Also refer to it as sex stuff. So
yeah.
So I guess we'll.
That's what she said. Obviously, she said, "Hey, you want to do some sex stuff?" I think it was very clear.
Anyways,
did we mention the insane sex scene that we have the flashback to with the commander and the woman? Did we skip that part?
Maybe, but
because
go ahead.
There's a sex scene with the guy. I think his name is Carlson. The guy they found in the capsule,
Carlson. I think, yeah,
yeah. And he's like explaining how like all this stuff went down on the ship, and they show the sex scene, and it's like totally wild. It's like these crazy strobe lights in different colors, and the audio has a baby crying in it, and so she's like, they're like kissing each other's neck and like kind of touching each other, and then it's like, wah, wah.
Oh no, it's not. So it's not a baby crying. I remember that now. It's a siren.
Oh, because I was watching this movie with headphones on, and I was like, wait, why are there baby cries underneath this sex scene music? Like, what is that? What is that supposed to be? This is like a weird thing I don't want to get into.
No, it was a siren going off.
I see. All right. Anyway, so we go to Ireland to get this lady. So we go to this random woman's apartment.
It might not be, but
it looked
really
like either Ireland or Scotland based on the scenery.
The
in the
curly
background.
redhead and the green valley.
Exactly. Merida is suddenly in this movie for no reason.
Change your fate. Sir Patrick Stewart shows up.
He does,
and I want to apologize for thinking.
Wait! We can't skip the interrogation of this woman because it's the grossest part of the movie.
We meet Patrick Stewart first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Trip and I recently went to the movies to see Mary Poppins Returns, and Sir Patrick Stewart is in a movie where he's playing Merlin disguised as a young twink.
Yes.
And I leaned over and I was like, of course Patrick Stewart would be like, I want a hot blonde twink to be the younger me. And you were like, you mean Ian McKellen? And I was like, you're right, I do.
They're best friends. I apologize. They're best friends. Besties. Not friends.
Not the man he lived with until his death, and he took no lovers and had no children.
Yes. Or in the parlance of certain families. So this is Aunt Jane and her good friend Julia.
Her special friend.
And we're like, what? What are we saying here?
That's what I love reading in history books when they're like, the women lived together until their old age with cats and never had children and never had any relationships, and they were definitely straight women. And it's like Jim from The Office looking at the camera, just.
There's one that gets tossed around a lot where they talk about this one dude. it might be like Isaac Newton, I don't remember, but it's like a famous scientist of the early science era, and they're like, and he died a virgin, and there is like copious amounts of information about his gay lovers
0% chance he died
that he had many of, and it's like, hey people, can we stop with this stupid shit? Like, clearly this person was not a straight person, and that's fine. That's just fine.
Well, there's a couple famous military dudes in history who were definitely, like, this what's his name? There's a famous general who came over from Prussia, or somewhere, to King of Prussia, to the battlefield, and, like, rolled up in a red sled covered in dogs, wearing a fur coat with his, like, young boy lover, who was also his secretary, and he whipped the troops into shape and, like, took other boy lovers and left them his estate and took them into his home, and they're like, they were just his mentees and he was their mentor. And it's like, no, there's no effing way that was what happened.
Also, I'm apologizing to you, but it's called protege.
Oh,
mentee
sorry.
sounds so stupid. I hate it so much. I realize language is fluid.
I never knew.
It's a stupid hill to die on, but it's called a mentor and a protege.
I never knew those words were connected.
Yes.
I
mentee
assumed
is so
that
stupid.
mentee was not correct.
But that's what everybody says mentee now. Everybody does.
I always assumed that was just a made up dumb thing, but I never knew protege was the appropriate connection to mentor.
Yes. A mentor has a protege. I think people just don't like to say that word because it maybe you know what it is? Over the years where they were like, this mentor general and his fleet of young boy proteges, and people are like, oh, that's what protege means. I'm not a protege. Hey, bro, I'm not no protege.
No pro.
Anyway, we get to the apartment of this woman, and the interrogation sequence with her is maybe the most uncomfortable I've been watching a movie for this show in over a year. Parasite 3D is probably the last time I felt this icky.
It's up there, yeah.
He grabs her by the lapels and he's shaking her, and it's like, as an audience, you're not 100% sure this guy is right. Like, you're pretty sure that's the alien, but you're not entirely certain.
Well, that's not what made me uncomfortable. Because, like, I understand when he's like, oh, she's in there, come out, like, get out of this woman. And then the woman kind of, like, smirks, and he's like, she's not in there, but I'm going to keep doing this. And I was like, once you said she's not in there.
Yes!
You brush this woman's shoulders off gently, and you say, I apologize for taking up your time. We'll be going now.
Yes.
But instead he's like, she wants it. She wants me to slap around and choke her till she gives me the answer. And I was like, my shoulders go up, everything contracts because I'm uncomfortable with this.
And the other dude, he's like, you might want to leave for this. And he's like, I love to watch. And he sits down on the couch, and I'm just like, what is this movie?
Emmanuel 5.
Clearly.
And then they kiss and nothing happens, and the woman, like, smirks and then collapses. And I was like, what is happening?
I'm so confused.
And then I was like, oh, it's definitely in Professor X, because he's the only other person we've met here.
Right.
And they're like, oh, let's go into this cell where there's this man with a birthmark, because it's definitely who he jumped into. And as soon as Professor X gets close, they, like, bear hug him and inject him with something that knocks him out.
Yeah. They give him quote-unquote hypnosis drugs. Okay, movie.
Also, he's unconscious. How do you hypnotize someone who's straight up unconscious?
Right, exactly.
It's like, if Get Out told me anything, it's that it's not quite unconscious, not quite conscious. It's an in-between.
Right.
It's the sunken place.
So this alien lady's voice comes out of his mouth, which is kind of cool looking.
And she says that the reason he's so attracted to her is because she sensed he was coming and pulled... There was definitely some gay shit on that ship, because she goes, we sensed your presence coming to us and pulled our forms from your minds. And it was 4 dudes who went into that spaceship.
Very interesting. Yeah, you're not wrong.
There was a lady on the spaceship they left from, but she did not go in. I think it was all dudes.
Right.
So she's like, I literally, like, my voice, my language, my look is all from you, so you're welcome. And then they kissed Patrick Stewart, and it's very brief.
Yeah. At that point, the life force comes, like, blasting out of him and swirling around the room. And this is, like, a very, very cool-looking Ghostbusters era effect of, like, swirling lights and stuff.
Yeah. He's the prime minister died, right?
Yes.
So he's dead. Patrick Stewart is dead. And they're like, get him on a helicopter and let's get out of here. So they all get in the helicopter. And This is what I think is the coolest effect of the movie. When Patrick Stewart and the Prime Minister's bodies both start bleeding, like out of their eyes and their nose and their mouth.
Yes.
And it's like pulling sideways out of their face, all of their face holes, and like collecting in the middle of the air, in the middle of the helicopter, and forming her body, and it's so cool to look at.
Yeah, I actually rewound this because I was trying to figure out how they did it, and I'm not sure. Like, I'm very impressed by like the thing forming in the air. It just looked awesome. The whole thing looked awesome.
Yeah, I loved it. Then they're like,
so it kind of forms into the shape of the lady vampire for like a second, and then it turns into goop.
Well, it's her, and she screams and then goops.
Yeah.
And then they're like, London is exploding, and it's the cutest little miniature London set.
I will say, like, a little bit to their defense, they obviously were never going to be able to afford like a mass chaos giant scene with lots of extras. This is probably the best low budget variant on oh my god, the city's in chaos that I've ever seen. It's still not great, but I'm really like the way that they chose to film it with like lots of tight close-ups and lots of like action jumbly stuff is really great and helps sell. Yeah, it helps sell the idea that London is in chaos better than it has any right to.
I agree. I just think that the miniatures, because they have in any wide of London, it's just the miniature exploding.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really cool and cute. And these they look more like zombies than vampires, so my brain calls them zombies.
Yeah, no, I have zombies loose in London all over my notes here.
Yeah, the zombies are everywhere. So they're like, hey, we're gonna go to the whatever building. And the helicopter lands down, and they run inside, go downstairs, see it's chaos, turn around, get right back out of there.
It's such a great shot. They, like, come down the stairs, and they see it, and they just are like, meh, and they run right back out.
And then, I love this as a bit of, like, as I'm an actor watching this, they jump in the helicopter, and they're like, take off! And then the doors fly open, and a bunch of zombies come out, and they're like, go, go! And the helicopter takes off 3 feet, and hovers there.
Yes.
Just low enough for the stunt performers to grab on to the thing, and then it takes off. And I was like, I see you, movie.
Yeah.
I see you, movie.
That was not well edited. There was also, like, the first zombie just kind of gets, like, knocked off, but the second one, he has to shoot it with a flare gun in the chest.
Well, the second one is trying to grabs its own flesh.
Yes.
And pulls its own flesh off, and that makes it fall.
Yeah.
And then the second one gets shot with a flare gun. Like the end of that movie.
It's like, do you have any weapons? And he's like, just this flare gun. And, shoop into the thing's chest, and it,
I almost wish it was a harpoon gun or something sillier.
Yes, all those helicopters with harpoon guns.
I want elevated silliness from this movie. Like, you're giving me naked space vampires.
Yes, yeah.
Think about the movie we're watching, Trip. I don't think harpoons. If you're questioning harpoons on a helicopter.
I'm just saying.
Title of a new children's book.
I have limits. That's all I'm saying.
I do not, apparently.
So this thing we didn't talk about earlier, it looks kind of like an umbrella, but made of like living flesh.
And like kind of bat-wingy. It's very much like those Victorian pagoda umbrellas.
Yeah, sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. A Victorian pagoda umbrella. Yeah, no, absolutely. That very commonly referenced item, a Victorian pagoda umbrella. Yeah, no, absolutely. Exactly those. Of course.
Okay.
I have 6 of them in my closet. Victorian pagoda umbrellas.
When I tell you a Victorian umbrella, what do you picture?
Like a parasol?
Like the ones that like vampires and goth kids use, right? Where it's like pointy up top and then it slopes down and has scalloped edges.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. You know what I was thinking the other day, since you just said goth kids?
Sure.
You don't see many goth adults.
No, you don't. And if you do, they're on like TLC.
Yeah, I just like, again, not trying to yuck anybody's yum. It's just really, I was just had that thought of like, you just don't see that very often. Like, I've never been at the grocery store and then like, oh, there's a goth adult right there. And like, whatever, you should enjoy whatever you enjoy, but I just am surprised. I think
I've seen one, and it was a South Philly Acme, so take that how you will.
That jives.
So that story checks out.
That jives. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, you don't see a lot of goth adults out there.
You really don't.
No, if you're out there and you are a goth adult, send us a pic.
Yeah. Bonus points if you're using the Podcast Republic app.
Anyway, we talk about this Victorian pagoda umbrella, and it's like hovering in space, and it's like they realize that the zombies are really just like busting the energy out of humans and shooting it up into space in the umbrella.
Well, it's weird. So, like, the street zombies are busting the energy into the hunky dude zombie leaders from the ship that didn't die, actually, it turns out. And then they're sending it into the lady who's sending it up in. So it's like a 3-step process.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile, the kooky doctor who we touched on earlier, that's kind of Doc Brown, has discovered that you can kill these things with an old school iron sword. So this is
Through
now
the
not
abdomen, not the heart.
Yes. So their energy center, their heart is like their belly button. So now our heroes have this information, and it's like, oh, it's time to, go running into battle. So they like drive into London into the chaos.
Yeah, and they get separated because the astronaut is like, oh, I'm going to the space headquarters, but really he's going to where the sexy lady is.
Yes.
So the turtleneck scientist goes to space headquarters, and he gets there, and he's like, where's the guy? And it's just the old man scientist, and he's being real weird and creepy in the shadows, and it's like, ruh-roh, gang.
Yeah. So
and
this is
like,
the big
opening
heel
his
turn.
arms and walking towards him.
Yes. And this brings in our big heel turn.
Is that why what heel comes from?
What?
Like someone doing a heel turn and being a villain? Is that where like being a heel comes from?
Yeah, but the term heel is like an old school, like it doesn't come from wrestling. It's like just an old school term for a bad guy.
That's what
playing
I mean.
the heel. Yeah, playing the heel.
Does that come from like doing a heel turn and being a villain?
Yeah, playing the heel.
So he gets infected, and then he turtleneck sweater scientist shoots him in the ab, and he explodes into dust.
Yes. He also, before that, explains Lifeforce transfer in excruciating detail.
I would have killed him sooner.
Right. Like I don't want to hear him talk anymore.
Before I even know he's infected, I'm just like, there's chaos. I don't think anyone's gonna do any tallies on who died when. So
yeah, exactly.
Shut up.
No one's gonna know. Yeah, 3 in the gut, 2 in the head, just to make sure.
And so he takes the sword and the gun over to where the sexy lady vampire is. And this is what's annoying, is that the astronaut is in an armored car.
Yes.
Driving through the streets. And I'm like, you're in an armored car. Roll up your windows and just mow everybody down.
Exactly.
They're all weak, frail dust zombies.
There's also like what absolutely was someone in this movie was promised that they were going to get to do this car explosion, and they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. So it's like, as this guy's driving away, completely unrelated to the action that's happening on screen, a car in the background blows up. Like, really cool, but it was just
great because
real. But it was just very clearly like, yes, Derek, we're gonna let you blow up a car. I promise we're gonna blow up a car. And then like they kept having to change the script, and Derek kept being like, you promised me a goddamn car. And so like, all right, fine, today, Derek, you're gonna blow up a car. And then they just put it. It's this like 3-second B-roll shot of a car exploding for no reason whatsoever.
And it's a nice explosion.
No, it looks dope. It's awesome, but it just feels so unnecessary.
And this I wrote, now she gets to wear a dress with 12 minutes left of the movie.
For like, as you said before, 90 seconds she's got this thing on before she gets her kit back off.
And the turtleneck sweater scientist shows up and tries to go up the very clear path through the zombies that they left on the steps because they're steps and it's dangerous.
Uh-huh.
And one of the other hunky male dude vampire who's left like appears in a tuxedo and starts doing body rolls at the top of these steps. And
yes.
Doesn't make sense. I'm not mad about looking at it, but it doesn't make sense.
So he stabs him through the gut with the sword.
And he explodes in red energy?
Yeah, it's real weird looking. I guess this is like he's
the movie
overloaded.
Didn't explain that.
No. Of course not.
Where in all of the explanations about energy transfers vampires.
You spent 20 goddamn minutes explaining this to me. You could have talked about colors at any point of that. So he interrupts.
They're both naked. Oh, good lord.
And they're like doing it, and then they're in this like pit, and there's all this swirling energy and stuff. And so Carlson down in the pit is like with the lady vampire, and the other guy crawls to the edge and is like yelling his name. Like, I got
he yells
the sword.
for too long. No,
Yes.
just jump down there, stab them, and you're done.
Well, I don't think he wanted to get into the energy pit because I think he knew he was going to die if he went down there.
Oh, I thought it was just like a hole in the cathedral because I think they're in St. Paul's.
Yeah, I think he was basically like,
where
I'm
the
not going
little
down there.
Herman comes.
Yeah, that shit's dangerous. I'm not going down there.
Swiggity swag, tuppence a bag.
So he tosses the sword down, and the guy in the bottom, Carlson, he stabs himself and the lady like a double stab.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's basically like, I'm not going to die, and I'm taking you with me. Whoop, and they transport up to the ship.
Roll credits.
It ends so fast. And then there's like a scene where the guy who threw him the sword, I think his name is Kane, which we haven't talked about this whole thing, but he goes running outside and he like looks up in kind of like fear and awe, and then that's it. That's the final section of the movie.
It's an unsatisfying ending.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's not that the movie needs to be longer because it's almost 2 hours, which is pushing it.
Yeah.
It's just, you could have trimmed out some of the middle part.
Yes.
And given a better ending.
Yeah, well, also, like, what am I meant to take away from this? Like, the ship kind of goes away, but does that mean they're coming back? Or is this safe now? Like, I have no idea what's happening.
Also, it looked like the entirety of London was turned into zombies. So is London just gone now?
Right.
London has fallen?
I think they might. I think they might have fallen. So final thoughts on Lifeforce?
It's not bad. It's enjoyable. It's just long. So
Yeah, that's
it's
how I
definitely
feel.
more of a drinking movie.
Yeah. So I want to do, would you recommend this? But I want to play a game afterwards that I'll explain to you briefly. But so it'll tie into that. But I am going to say I recommend this. I think it's like a little bit too long, and honestly, like if you're getting bored where they're explaining how life force energy works and you want to skip a minute or two ahead, you're probably fine. Like you're really not going to miss anything in this movie. The effects are incredible. The all of the production stuff is awesome. The acting is decent. Like
it's definitely a recommend. It's just not. It's just long. So just be aware of that.
If it was 15 minutes shorter, it would probably be like up there among my favorite movies we've done for the show because of just how crazy it is. Yeah. So I want to play this game, and I made this joke earlier in the podcast, but I want to play Canon or Canon, and
which is a great audio joke.
Yes. Well, I have a wrinkle that I might want to add. I'll see what you think about it. But the idea is, do we add this movie to the canon, meaning like we're saving it, or do we shoot it out of a canon and get rid of it? And I think it might be more fun and stupider for sure if you're not allowed to specify. You have to do it entirely with inflection, and the other person has to guess what you mean, and that is the answer.
Okay. Okay.
Is that too stupid? It might be too stupid.
I think we'll try it. We'll see how it goes, because we can always edit it out.
Okay. So I think we should go through all of the canon movies we've done. So I went back and got the list. So the total list.
Not just this one. Okay.
No, I think I think from now on, whenever we do a canon movie, we decide if it's canon or canon, and we rank them that way. So I'm just gonna read all the titles off to you, so you know the movies we're talking about. So it's New Year's Evil, Death Wish 4, Over the Top, and Mannequin, and now Life Force.
Over the Top was the Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling one, right?
Correct.
Okay. Which one first?
Let's start with New Year's Evil. Canon or canon?
Canon.
Okay, to me that sounds like you're saying you want it added to the canon. CANON.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I am also gonna rank that one as canon.
You can't say also, because then I know what you're getting. What you're doing.
This is true.
Ruined the first
I ruined
round.
the first round. I'm sorry. All right. Death Wish 4. I'll go first since I screwed that up. And I will say canon.
That sounds like you want to keep it.
That is correct. That only because at the end he kills the guy with a missile launcher, I think. That I remember
I
very
forgot about
vividly.
the missile launcher.
Yeah.
Canon.
Yeah, you don't like that movie. You're going to kill that one for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Being shot out of a cannon.
Okay. So now we're going Sylvester Stallone Over the Top arm wrestling.
Canon.
Wow, I'm stunned. That sounds like a keeper.
Yeah. I didn't hate that movie.
Okay. I was sure that you were going to go canon on that one.
No, because there's enough bicep porn in that movie to be worth it.
I also feel like I did it again.
God damn it! If I'm going to sound like a crazy person to my boyfriend in the next room saying the word canon with different inflections, you can't keep ruining this game.
Oh, I'm so
Because
sorry.
he only hears my side.
Canon.
You're keeping it, I think.
All right, I'm gonna do Mannequin and Lifeforce, and then I'm gonna ask you so I don't f it up. Okay? Okay. All right. I made this dumb game up, and I'm screwing it up. All right. For Mannequin, canon, and for Lifeforce, canon.
Those are both keepers?
Yeah, I love Mannequin very much, and I think this movie is cool enough.
For Mannequin, I will say canon.
I knew you would love that, bad boy.
And for Lifeforce, I'll say canon.
Okay, so that's a light keep on that one, too. I was sure you were going to kill New Year's Evil, Death Wish, and Over the Top. I'm very surprised.
Oh, I enjoyed New Year's Evil. I hated how misogynistic it was.
Yeah.
But the movie itself is fun, and I like What's-Her-Face as that rocker chick.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I ruined two out of 5 there, but I think that is the new game we will play for every time we do a canon movie, which...
I like that.
Yeah, we have a few more, definitely a few more this year, I think. We'll definitely have one on our next episode, but I think we decided to do February as something that will also include canon, so that'll be fun, too. Now, you were tasked to pick the next movie for this, and I don't know what you've picked, but real quick, just remind people that if you want to get a hold of us, it's Facebook, Dissecting the 80s on Facebook, Dissect the 80s on Twitter. You can email us at dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you haven't done it yet, please review the show on iTunes. I have one here from our wrestler friend Austin Lane, so I'm gonna do this one in my best Randy Savage voice. So if you'll just give me a second, I'm gonna take a drink of water. This is a 5-star review from Austin Lane. Amazing podcast. I love these guys. I went back and downloaded every single episode and listened to all of them in a matter of about a week. Ooh, yeah. There's my bad macho man for our wrestler friend. So if you'd like to hear your review read on the air, probably not in that bad voice, review the show on iTunes. We read them on the air. And most importantly, if you like the show, tell 2 friends, because that's the best way to hear about new podcasts. I'm constantly asking my friends for suggestions and recommendations. And so if you like this show, make sure you tell people about it, because that's the easiest way to find it. And lastly, if you'd like to support us a little more than that, we have a Patreon page where you can pledge a donation to the show every month and get some cool stuff in return, including up to getting to pick your own episode. We've actually got 2 listeners who later this year are going to be picking episodes through their Patreon pledges, which is really, really awesome. So thank you to them. That is all the things I wanted to say. Dissectingthe80s.com is also out there for all your needs of getting all this information about the podcast. We're going to continue Canonuary in 2 weeks.
10 Little Indians.
I do love an Agatha Christie. I bet they don't
It's
do
one of my, it's a great play.
Yeah, no, I'm wondering how good a canon movie that will be. That will be interesting. Well, I'm excited to dig into that. We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about that. Until then, I have been Trip Lano.
I will always be Andrew Lano.
Until January 27th.
Don't you forget about me.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production. Ow.